As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
Now that we know how to identify pre-threat behaviors, we're going to look at ways we can encounter suspicious people as safely and effectively as possible. First of all, as a threat responder on my church's safety team, when should I take the initiative to check out something suspicious? Now. The earlier I investigate something, the more time the team and I have to react. Time buys us options, and that makes us and everyone at church safer. Now, everybody's personality is different. Some people are more predisposed to take action, while others are more predisposed to sit back and watch things play out. Now, to be an effective protector, we need to take initiative. If you see something, say something. I've had to force myself to take initiative when the conflict avoidant part of me didn't really want to. For example, one time when I was serving, I saw a pretty big guy coming towards the entrance from the parking lot. He was wearing biker gear and he looked kind of intimidating. I asked another guy on the safety team, "Do you know him?" He said, "Oh yeah, that's Frank. He's a good guy." And sure enough, now that I know Frank, he is a really cool guy, and it's cool to just say hi to him every week. Another time I was in the children's area and I saw a man in the main lobby hanging out during service wearing a trench coat. So I went over to him and I said hi, I shook his hand, I introduced myself, and he also turned out to be a really nice guy. I got the vibe that he wasn't a threat. I let the safety team member in that area know that I had talked to the gentleman and he seemed fine, but I let him know so he could keep an eye on him. So, the right time to do something is now. But what if I get nervous and I wait a while? Well, then the right time is now. Again, you don't have to immediately go contact the person. As a matter of fact, if you see someone who looks really kind of scary, I would let the team know and get help so that you don't go encounter them alone. Most of the time though, if you see somebody, maybe they look like they could be a homeless person, but they're not violent, you can just introduce yourself, share your name, ask their name, shake their hand, offer them coffee and a donut, ask them questions about where they're from and how they're doing, and you'll get a feel for what they're like. And maybe you can connect them with a ministry at church that can help them. Or you can greet them and make them feel welcome. However, if they're not doing well, or if they are violent, you can call for backup, prevent them from going near others, and you can help to de-escalate them. In the case where you see someone with multiple threat indicators and your alarm bells are going off, don't encounter them alone, because that's not very safe. Let's go back to our example where it's summertime and a person in a trench coat is approaching from the parking lot. Now, step number one, communicate with your team. This may be Overwatch, who notices them and they tell everybody, or maybe you're outside the church in the parking lot, but let the team know over the radio so they can be ready to help you and to respond accordingly. So now Overwatch knows where to focus their attention, and they can alert you to things around you. The 911 contact person knows to be ready if they're needed. The access team is ready to lock down the doors if they're needed, and the medical responder is ready if they're needed as well. Now the second step, make sure you don't do it by yourself. Bring another safety team person with you, preferably one that's trained and armed as a threat responder. I recommend that threat responders carry both OC spray and a pistol and are well trained and effective with both. For this situation, we're going to talk about contact and cover teamwork. One of you will be the contact person and the other will be the cover person. The contact person handles all the communication with the suspicious person. They are ready to welcome them if they respond positively and ready to bail out, to use OC spray to put hands on them or draw a pistol, depending on how dangerous a response you may get from the person. The cover person stays a bit off to the side of the contact person. They are able to observe the big picture and warn the contact person if another person starts to approach. They're ready to come to the contact person's aid if a physical altercation takes place. They're also ready to draw and deploy pepper spray or a pistol if needed. As the cover person, be mindful of your backstop if you are forced to shoot. Position yourself on the side of the contact person in such a way that makes your backstop as safe as possible. For example, if you're on this side of the cover person, your backstop may be cars and potentially people in the parking lot. But if you're on the opposite side, your backstop may be mostly trees, and that is much safer. Now, as your team of contact and cover people approaches the suspicious person, don't approach directly in front of the person. You should be slightly off center in flanking positions where the suspicious person would have to rotate their body a bit to directly engage with you. Also, if it's possible, approach in such a way as to have some cover between you and the suspicious person. This could be a car, a fountain, a tree, etc. Now, keep distance between your team of two and the suspicious person. Don't walk directly up to into their face before you begin talking to them. At this close range, you have almost no reaction time if they attack you. Instead, stay at least 10 feet away from the suspicious person and set a strong boundary with a verbal command. You want the command to be assertive, but not something disrespectful that will escalate the situation. For example, the contact person could say, "Hi sir, please stop right there." Now if the person obeys your command and stops, that's a good sign. Then you can talk with them, ask them about their trench coat or their bag or whatever the issue is. However, if they disregard you and keep coming, you're already in conflict and you should be ready to act. The contact person should loudly yell something like, "Stop! Back up!" If they keep coming after that, you're already in a fight, unless you're dealing with someone who has cognitive issues or is deaf or earbuds in. But any normal person will not keep coming at you if you've yelled at them to stop. So continue to back up to create distance between you and the suspicious person. This is a good time to spray them with OC spray if they're coming at you aggressively, and we'll cover that technique a little bit later. If you see a person exhibiting multiple threat indicators, like the shooter at White Settlement, Texas, who was wearing a long coat, a fake beard, and a wig, I recommend that the contact person should already have OC spray in one of their hands. The cover person should be cheating their draw in a concealed way with their hand on their pistol so they can be ready to respond immediately if you are facing a lethal threat. Now, as you're approaching a suspicious person, you should pay attention to the following things. First of all, their eyes. The eyes are the windows to the soul. Their eyes will help convey their mental and emotional state. Now, secondly, their hands. If they start to ball up their fists and, kind of blade off like this, or they start to reach for their waistband, an attack is coming next. And we'll cover how to handle that a little bit later. Also, their stance. If they keep coming at you aggressively or start to square off, you better be ready to defend yourself. Now, speaking of stance, let's talk about yours. If you're the contact person in close with a suspicious person, or if they're closing distance on you, keep your hands up in a non-aggressive stance. That way you can protect yourself from a sucker punch and be ready to draw OC spray or a weapon if the person pulls a weapon on you. You absolutely do not want your hands down at your side if the person is inside your reactionary gap. They're inside your reactionary gap if they're within the distance where they can kick or punch you. Now, action beats reaction. Once they're that close to you, if they throw a punch and your hands are down at your sides, you'll not be able to get your guard up fast enough to block that punch. You could get knocked unconscious, and that is unacceptable. You were the protector, and you've got to stay safe. Now, in regards to this defensive, non-aggressive stance, there's a couple different options depending on what works best for you. Many times you'll see police officers in what is called an interview stance, or kind of looks like you're praying, interview or prayer stance, as they speak with civilians. This stance doesn't look threatening, but it places your hands close to your face, allowing you to defend yourself quickly if you need to. Another option would be to have your arms crossed and maybe one hand on your chin. And this stance doesn't look aggressive, but it also gives you the chance to get your hands up quickly and defend your head. Now, a third option, usually only used when someone's approaching you aggressively, is the palms forward, I don't want any trouble stance. Okay, with this stance, you want to drop your strong side foot back a little bit to give you stability, just like a boxing stance. Now, if you're right-handed, your right side is your strong side. If you're left-handed, then your left side's your strong side. Now, let's say you've encountered a person who's upset. They aren't attacking you or anyone else, but they are upset, and it looks like if they continue to get angry, something bad could happen. At this point, the person may choose to de-escalate if we can give them a proper off-ramp. Now, this, of course, is our number one option that we want. If that person can calm down and we can be calm, we'll take that option every day and twice on Tuesday. We win 100% of the fights we can avoid, and this glorifies God. Jesus said in Matthew 5:9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." So de-escalation is our number one goal. But we have to recognize that while we can try to help people calm down, the decision on whether or not they will de-escalate is not up to us. It's up to them. There are some people who won't de-escalate under any circumstances, and evil doesn't stop itself. In some cases, we'll have to stop it. But a huge percentage of the time, people will calm down when given an opportunity, and that's what we're going for. There's an excellent book on de-escalation techniques by George Thompson called Verbal Judo, The Gentle Art of Persuasion. In the book, we're taught not to react to events, in that case the other person's in control, but to listen and respond to the other person, controlling the interaction to steer it towards a positive outcome. One acronym that's used for de-escalation is what's called the LEAPS method, L-E-A-P-S. Now the L is for listen, the E is for empathize, A is for ask questions, P is for paraphrase, you kind of mirror back what they're saying, and the S is for save face and to summarize the outcome. For example, maybe mom has checked her child into the children's ministry before service. After service, dad comes to pick up his kid, but mom didn't give him the claim ticket. The children's ministry won't release a child unless the adult has the matching claim ticket, and the dad starts to get upset. "Hey, that's my kid," he says, starting to get hot. So if you're there, you can listen to him with your hands up in a non-aggressive stance, Empathize with him. I'm sorry, man, I understand it's frustrating. I know this is your kid. And bring the volume and temperature of the conversation down. You can ask questions and mirror back what he's saying. Like, okay, so mom's got the claim ticket and she's far away now? Okay, oh man, gotcha. Okay, so now offer an option that allows him to save face. For example, you can say, we do have an option where you can verify things even if you don't have the claim ticket. Could you please fill out this form? Once we have your information and we verify it, you're good to go. Just come over here in this area and I'll get you a form and a pen. Now the dad has calmed down and he fills out the form. So that's a pretty easy example, but sometimes you will encounter people who might get really hot and insult you, your family, and everything else. And we've got to be led by the Spirit, not by our flesh. As John Correa from Active Self-Protection says, your ego is not your amigo. Don't take things personally and don't escalate things if they get rude. If someone tells you you're terrible, you can agree with them. If they say, F you, you can say, yep, F me. Well, okay, don't be rude to them, but this will bring the temperature down if you're not combative. In the past, a model that I've used to try to get someone to do something is, okay, first I'm gonna ask you, then I'm gonna tell you, and next I'm going to make you. However, when you're using verbal judo and de-escalation, the model's a little different. So it looks a little more like this. First, I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna make an ethical appeal. Then I'm gonna set the context. At a reasonable appeal, I'm gonna explain what the policies and the rules are. I'm gonna present options. A reasonable appeal, what's in it for you if they do, and what's not in it for you if you don't. And then we're gonna confirm, is there anything else I can do to help you here? And then I'm gonna act. So, let's say a person in the lobby is being loud, rude, and disrespectful to others. You and the safety team decide this person needs to leave. You're the contact person, and you've listened to the person, and you've been respectful. When asking them to leave, you want to set up a positive alternative. And we don't want to make it personal about you and me. We want to keep the focus on a policy that makes people safe, not on yourself. So that could look something kind of like this. First, ask, sir, we're here at church where people come to worship God. Could you please go outside with me to make it easier for the people here to focus? And then set context. We'd like you to be able to worship with us, but our policy is that if someone's being loud and distracting to others, we ask them to leave. And then present options. Hey, if you want to go outside with me, that's great, but if not, I'll need to contact the police and they will come and arrest you for trespassing. And then confirm. Okay, so we're going to head outside and talk with me. Excellent. And then last, act. Follow them outside, or if they won't, ask a team member to call 911 or whatever steps you need to take. Most of the time, people will de-escalate and respond in a non-violent way. However, there are some people who will not de-escalate, and you may be forced to defend yourself and others. So now we're going to look at the question, when are you allowed to defend yourself? This question can be looked at through the lens of morality, what's right, and the law, what is legal. In our discussion here, we're going to focus mostly on the legal aspect, what's legal, what's law, what's not the law. So please check your local laws, as this can vary greatly from state to state and country to country. I'm not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice. Generally, in the United States, you're legally able to defend yourself or others when, number one, there's a reasonable belief, what a reasonable person would believe. That two, that there's an imminent threat, a real physical danger that is likely to occur or about to happen in this immediate time frame. And that threat is number three, of bodily injury, harm, or death. So all three things, the reasonable belief of an imminent threat, and that threat must be of bodily injury, harm, or death, all three must be present. If so, you're legally able to defend yourself. But if only 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3 are present, you are not allowed to legally defend yourself or others. For example, if a man in the lobby says he's going to run over you with a tank, should you legally defend yourself? Well, unless there's a tank in the lobby or parked outside, there's no imminent threat of bodily harm, injury, or death. So please don't hit, restrain, or shoot this guy. However, what he just said is a threat, and you should ask him to leave. But you're not legally authorized to put hands on him. So another example, a man outside the entrance squares up his stance towards you and puts up his hands in a boxing fashion and says he's going to hit you. Is this an imminent threat? Yes. He has taken actions that would make a reasonable person believe that he is about to cause bodily harm. This would be a good time to get away from him and/or spray him with OC spray. Here's a third example. If a man comes in the lobby, takes out a gun, and says that he's going to hurt people, is that an imminent threat? Yes. He has taken actions that make a reasonable person believe he will cause harm or death. You can respond with reasonable, proportional force. You can put your hands on him, OC spray him, or shoot him to protect yourself and others. Okay, so we talked about when you're allowed to defend yourself. Now let's talk about how you are allowed to defend yourself. Well, legally allowed. So we're going to look at something called the force continuum. No, it's not another J.J. Abrams Star Wars movie. Here we can see low force on one end of the scale and extreme force on the other. So starting at the low end, we have presence. Simply by being present, coming up and standing near someone, or standing outside the front of the entrance of the church, this can be a show of force that might dissuade someone from doing something that they shouldn't do. So the next step up on the continuum is verbal interaction. And here you may ask somebody to leave or command them to stop what they're doing. The next step up is non-lethal force. Now this may involve putting your hands on somebody, pushing them, restraining them, or striking them. It could also be something like spraying someone with pepper spray or using a taser. And we're talking about actions that won't kill someone, but it will have a significant impact on them. So at the very highest level, we have lethal force. And this includes shooting someone with a gun, stabbing them with a knife, hitting them with a car, or if you hit somebody just right and knock them out and they fall back and hit their head on the ground, that can kill them, right? So this is taking an action that can result in death. As a citizen, you're only legally able to respond to the force shown against you or others with a reasonable, proportional response. You can face legal action and jail time if you escalate force. For example, if a person is verbally insulting you or others, calling you names, cursing at you, you're not authorized to respond with physical force. If they're pushing you, which is non-lethal force, you are not allowed to respond with lethal force. So if you carry lethal force, such as a pistol or a knife, it's important to also carry a non-lethal option, such as OC spray, that's something between a harsh word and a gun. If you only carry a gun, and you don't carry a non-lethal option, and you haven't trained non-lethal options like martial arts, you may feel that your only option is lethal force. But not every threat requires a lethal response. I've heard the saying that to the man who only carries a hammer, every problem can look like a nail. However, a good threat responder is trained in de-escalation in martial arts, knows how to use pepper spray and firearms. You can use the appropriate tool for the appropriate job. And the better trained and the more skilled that you are, the more that you work with your team and you use teamwork and good tactics, the less likely you'll ever have to use deadly force. And that's what we want. So, for someone serving with a church safety team, we need to make this abundantly clear. You are private citizens and you are not law enforcement. You are not authorized to put hands on people if they have not threatened you or others first. You're only allowed to defend yourselves and others in the same way as any other private citizen is legally authorized to defend themselves or others. You are not allowed to detain people who have not threatened or harmed you or others. And you could be litigated for kidnapping if you do so. So, contact law enforcement to deal with resistant or combative people. Try to de-escalate and disengage if it's at all possible. Now, if you ask a person to leave and they won't, let them know that they're trespassing and that you will call law enforcement to come and arrest them if they don't comply. Wait for law enforcement if the person refuses to leave. Physical force is a last resort. All right, with this in mind, here are some scenarios that you and your safety team can simulate and use to practice your communication, contact and cover, encountering suspicious people, and de-escalation skills. Before you begin, double check to make sure that everyone who is training is disarmed. Pat them down and frisk them to be sure they don't have any weapons, pens, multi-tools, nail clippers, or any kind of sharp or dangerous object on them. For this round of scenarios, you will not be engaging in any hands-on or combative scenarios. So make sure your team has their radios on so they can practice their communication and other skills. Now, you can simulate the following and feel free to add in any other non-combative scenarios that would be helpful for your team. So one scenario could be a person in a trench coat who approaches from the parking lot or is in the lobby. You could have a homeless person who's approaching and becomes upset. You might have a person with a really large bag or backpack that approaches. And another scenario would be a parent who doesn't have the claim ticket to check their child out of the children's ministry and is upset that they have to confirm their identity.